Hello and welcome back. If you recall from the current state demonstration, we were working with a model of the design process for an electric utility. We're now going to take that model of the current state and analyze it using LINQ's dashboards and insights. As we dig into the current state of the utility example, we're going to look for where there might be some challenges or things that can be fixed. Let's investigate the analysis tools. The first one is the balanced scorecard. I've expanded the service request validation. You can see that this process costs just under $300,000. If I look at the actions and turn on the cost label, I can see the most expensive part of this is customer account creation is reviewing, validating, and calling the customer, which costs $165,000 per year. Then you can see the information and the systems and the people that contribute to that. The service request validation is the most critical part of the entire process, and that's reflected in the value. This part of the process impacts most information outputs and all the business outcomes and is critical for billing. As we go down in value, you can see some of the other costs, and there are two red flags here. The LINQ set as-built posted costs $1.7 million. That's nearly the most expensive part of the process, and it's delivering very low value. At the very bottom of the value scale is the final as-built print flow. This delivers the lowest value and costs the most. You can see right away that these two areas present great opportunity for rework and cost savings. Now let's go to the People dashboard. This provides a visual impact summary for each role and the actions that role provides. We'll look at the role designer first because they have the most appearances in the model. The designer shows up 10 times, and their hourly rate is $65 an hour. The overview here shows the designer supports 6 outcomes, they perform 10 actions, and they use 3 systems. Clicking here can take you to the actions that they perform. Now looking over here, these charts show high value, high cost items, and these are the things you would typically expect a designer to be doing, creating designs, pre-design visit. Then here in the center, you can see all the actions laid out in a cost versus value graph. Again, the high cost, high value items are things you would typically expect a designer to do. But if we move to the left, we can see some high cost, lower value items where we might be able to save some money, like create work packet, create permit requests, and create material requests. Maybe these things could be automated or taken out of the designer's hands if that's possible. And here we have a visual model that is essentially the job description of the designer relative to this process. These are the systems used, these are the actions performed, these are the information assets produced, and these are the business outcomes supported. Scrolling down, you can see the highest value action for this role. This is a detailed summary of the actions taken by the designer and all the details about those actions. You can even click here to jump back to the canvas to see the action in the context of the overall model, should you desire to do that. Scrolling down, here are the outcomes supported along with the supporting information, supporting actions, and systems used. Then we have the information assets produced, and finally the systems used. Expanding the asset management system, we can see the designer spends 12,700 hours using asset management out of a total of 17,700 hours they spend on this process. Below that are the actions performed using this system. Out to the right, we can see that the use of the asset management system expends 52% of all the hours used in all other systems. That may be okay, but it might also point to a problem. Unless the designer is supposed to be spending that much time in asset management, it may point to a problem with the usability of the system. Now let's investigate the insights. Initially, we have the sketch summary. This first panel just summarizes the system, as the name implies. However, let's look at the cost-value analysis. The first graph displays the cost versus value of the LINQ sets or major groupings of activities. We can change this view by selecting this pull-down. Let's select information outputs and then value-weighted cost allocation. This shows us the relative value and cost of each information output in the model. What's most interesting here is that we can see that the highest cost piece of information also has the lowest value, printed maps. Immediately, this is an obvious candidate for cost savings. Now let's look at the system summary. The initial panel shows us that we have zero automation within the model. Right away, we can see this is an opportunity to potentially streamline activities. Now let's look at information assets supplied by systems sorted by value. The most valuable system here is asset management. That's not a surprise. However, the second most valuable system is paper. Again, this is a red flag and an opportunity to reduce cost by reducing reliance on paper. And finally, we can look at the individual system summary insight. By selecting the desired system, we can quickly see how many outcomes are supported, information outputs supported, information assets produced, actions automated, and the number of roles that use it. Additionally, we can see how many hours are being spent, the cost of using it, and the amount of information that relies on the system. Looking here at the Access database, we can see that the organization spends in excess of $500,000 a year using it. Is that the best use of resources? Could be replaced by a system that is less isolated so that data sharing is optimized. This is the cost allocation insight. On the initial panel, we can see that the cost of the entire process is $6.89 million. There are 42 total actions and 10 information outputs created. In the breakdown of the costs here, we can see that the biggest expense is the cost of printed maps at $1.98 million. Another great view is the information cost breakdown. By selecting any information output, you can see the cost of all the actions supporting that information product. We can potentially find areas to fine-tune our savings. For example, calling the customer costs over $10,000 a year. There might be an opportunity for automation here. So let's look at the action Call Customer in the Action Cost Allocations. There is $82,500 of produced information reliant on calling the customer. Finally, let's look at the impact assessment. This is probably the most flexible and powerful tool within the insights. Impact assessment can be performed based on canvas selection, output value, or tags. And we're going to use tags here. If you recall from the first video in our series, we placed a high-risk tag on the use of paper within the model. We will do an impact analysis using that tag. By using the tag and focusing on the entirely impacted node setting within the model, we can see that changing or removing the production of paper will impact some $5.68 million of the overall process. So retrofitting the process will be an extensive job, but could save, as we have seen, somewhere around $1.9 million. The idea here is that these various tools can be used to identify inefficiencies. Things like where you're doing double entry, having too much reliance on paper, or heavy manual tasks. Armed with this knowledge, the next step is to build a future state where you model different actions, replacement of systems, or reallocation of resources. There are many different ways you can impact the process. That will be the next step, to show how we can build a future state and use that to create a business case for change. Thanks again, and check out our next video on the future state.